Hi everyone, so I can finally share with you my tutorial on Frostmourne that Phalangida and I made for our friend Casper. I started sealing and painting the sword a bit too soon because we weren't sure if it would work, but wait until I actually tell you to do it because it would save you a lot of time. So we started out by making a pattern in the size that we wanted our final sword to be, and we just freehanded it. Then we transferred our pattern onto 2 cm isolation foam, cut 2 swords out and hot glued them together. We transferred our inside markings so we would know where to cut the sword, and then we started beveling all the edges to give it the right shape. In the middle we carved out a piece to fit our LED lights, but because our PVC pipe took up so much space, we ended up just cutting the entire piece out and then hot gluing our PVC pipe in. Make sure you press it inside the foam at the bottom really well, because that will be a weak point otherwise. Next we glue on some aluminum foil on top of the PVC to reflect the lights better, and we add our LEDs on top of that. We use 2 lights per rune and then 1 light per eye. We traced out the wing pieces on the side because it saved us a lot of foam by doing it this way. Then we cut it out, and Merluce is cutting out some skull pieces here. She glued 2 together so she could have a base to start carving out the face, and I have 4 layers of the wing pieces, and I make sure I put a hole in the top ones for the lights to come out for the eyes, and on the back side for the battery pack. Once you have the shape that you want, it's time for paper mache. So we took wallpaper paste with water and newspaper, and once that's dry we add a couple of layers of gesso so we can sand most of the rough parts off. We glued on our skull on the front side, making sure that our lights were in the eye sockets, and then cut holes in the side pieces for the side handle, and we just glued it in with hot glue. For the side handles I just sand it really quickly and then hot glue yarn around it. For the skulls on the side we used aluminum foil, and I just made a ball in a skull shape and I pressed in the eye socket shape with the back of my scissors. The horn is more aluminum foil, but I added a toothpick to make it a bit more sturdy. And then I covered all of it in painter's tape, and I paper mache the skull. And for the small skulls on the top part of the sword, I do the same. I make a skull shape, I press in the eye sockets, I put a painter's tape over it, and then I paper mache the whole thing. The horns I made pretty much in the same way. I took aluminum foil and bended it in the shape that I wanted, added a bunch of painter's tape around it, and at this point you can still add more aluminum foil if you want, and then paper mache everything. Once the paper mache is dry, I covered the whole horn in yarn just by using hot glue, and then I pressed some holes in there to put skewers in there. I pressed the skewers on top of the skull so I see where I have to make holes in the skull. Push the screws into the skull, add a bunch of hot glue, push it in, and then add more hot glue. For the details I took 2mm craft foam and I just super glued it. I also use super glue to glue on the spikes and some half pearls. To get the pattern that I needed, I just put some saran wrap on the sword and tape so I can draw out the shape I also draw out where my lights are so I can put the runes in the exact location that I want them in. I transfer my pattern and the runes onto 2mm craft foam, cut it out with tiny scissors. I use tumbled glass distressing to get the blue that I wanted, and then I cut a piece of packaging material, but because I didn't want to have to paint too close to the inside of my runes anymore, I did that beforehand and then glued my packaging material and my paper to the back. Because I made the mistake of sealing my sword beforehand, I have to sand it before I can add contact cement and glue on my foam piece. Make sure you press it really well. So now I was supposed to actually seal and paint the entire sword, and I did that both at the same time by adding black acrylic paint to my wood glue and putting about 3 or 4 layers on. And then I started dry brushing by getting some silver paint, getting most of it off before I actually paint the sword, so you only get a really thin layer and it will adhere really well to the top parts and not so well to the lower parts, and then it will pretty much give you a natural highlight and shading. For the details, I put on 2 layers of black and then 2 layers of gold. I traced my magnets on the back of the sword where the skull's gonna be. I cut out a piece and then pressed in the foam pretty firmly to give a more sturdy surface to glue on. Then I filled the holes with hot glue and put in my magnets, and then glued the other magnet on the back of the skull. Inside the hole for the battery pack, I put a piece of elastic so my battery pack wouldn't fall out, and then I used contact cement to glue fabric on the handle, use hot glue to glue some strips of fabric on top of it, and watered down acrylic paint to give it more of a 3D look by just adding it on the lower pieces. And that's it! You have a sword. Make sure your magnets are strong enough, because mine were not. You will lose your head. Thank you for watching, and subscribe if you want to see more videos.